You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
All right, hello, Knight Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming at you from the 1148 studios, and this is Knightline 257 on the award-winning Knightline Sports Network. Joining me as always, happy Father's Day, by the way. Go ahead, Roger, sorry.
Roger Phipps, and on this week's show, happy Father's Day, by the way, Bounce House Weekend Recap, we discuss playoff expansion, we welcome Brandon Helwig to the podcast, recruiting refresh, the next UCF Olympian, ? We wish Knightnation a happy Father's Day, the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week, news and notes, and your questions on Ask Knightline.
All right, well, it's been a while. I'm glad to have you back. Glad that y'all are back listening. So much has been going on in my life. So we just haven't been able to get things together and do this. We've obviously still been doing the Tuesday night show, but Knightline has kind of gotten put on the back burner for a little while. It's going to, obviously with, the summer and all that stuff, it will come back with a vengeance later on as well. So if you don't hear from us for a couple of weeks, it doesn't mean that we forgot about you, and we're still doing this. Don't think that we're not, all that stuff. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But it's good to be back, Roger.
Absolutely. Summer, it's been kind of a weird one this year because of everything that was been going on with the sports being pushed out. But every once in a while, we do need to walk away as well. We appreciate everyone's support, and honestly, sometimes I feel a little guilty, but please bear with us because sometimes we do need to walk away and take care of the families
guilty.
And do stuff with them.
I never feel guilty.
Well, you don't.
Guilt is not a thing
sometimes.
that exists in my thought process. Yes,
I wish I could live
sometimes,
that way.
No, I feel a little bit guilty sometimes when we don't do these shows, but I changed jobs and all this other stuff, so it just got extremely hectic there for a couple of weeks, and then, the stepdaughter is back from college, and we wanted to do stuff. One of her friends is staying at the house, and so we've been going places and doing things, and the world is open again, and you can go places without masks, and it's awesome. So just been busy doing that kind of stuff, exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so
I can tell.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I can tell you up here, I know in the Panhandle area, as many of you know, I live up here. It is full-fledged. Everybody that had that pent-up vacation energy are all here. I've been to Walmart 3 times in the past week and a half, and they've been out of just about everything. It's just ridiculous. The lines are all the way throughout the store. So it's a good thing because that means we're back in full swing and some sense of normalcy. But on the other hand, please, people, let me buy my groceries.
Well, that serves you right for going to Walmart, I guess. I avoid that place like the plague. I shouldn't say plague. I guess that was probably bad. Anyway.
Double entendre.
Yeah. Well, so we're back at it. We're doing it. We're doing our stuff here. We're going to hear from Brandon Helwig here in a little while, talking to him about recruiting because it's been going crazy. Gus Malzahn is absolutely on fire over there at the UCF campus trying to get recruits on campus because of this whole thing has been weird because of the whole pandemic thing, and so the timelines all got pushed back. So there's a little bit of a different feel to all of this, and even more of a different feel because now it's Gus Malzahn at the helm over there, and he does things a little differently. So we're getting recruits into UCF that never have, you wouldn't think of getting a lot of these more 5-star players, more 4-star players, all these things. That we got visitors that are absolutely incredible coming in and seeing the campus and hanging out with Gus and all that stuff. So I am so excited. I haven't been this excited in a very long time. In fact, I don't even remember the last time. Maybe when Scott Frost first got here, I was excited because I knew that he was going to bring a really exciting brand of football. But I think I'm more excited for this because I know that Gus is going to bring a more quality football, I think. And I think that that's quality players, quality game. I just have a great feeling about what's going to happen out there. So that gets me excited.
No, I agree with you. I mean, listen, we've all seen the type of firepower. I mean, right now, there was a 5-star, the top-rated 2023 quarterback in the entire country was on campus this weekend. So we never, and I've been a UCF football fan since 1999. We've never had that level of recruit strolling around our campus, and
just even coming. There's doesn't even matter if they come here and play, just that they came to UCF just to see it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of those guys.
Official visits.
Yeah, there's a lot of those guys that we're not going to get. But as Brandon mentions in the interview that we did, you'll hear a little while later, we're shopping for the future as well because of the transfer portal now. I'm a little rusty here. So, but yeah, a lot of people on campus that maybe won't come here this time around, but with that transfer portal, maybe could come here later, which is an interesting
I can tell you this.
Thought.
There's a lot of top 5s out there. If you are following on social media with a lot of these guys, there's a lot of top 5s out there, and UCF is included, and it's no longer us, ECU, Coastal Carolina, whoever. All you're seeing is, in fact, there's one recruit out there just dropped his top 5. It's Georgia, Florida, FSU, Miami, and us. That's it. And if you look across the board, these are all 4-star guys or high 3-star guys, and they've all got extensive, the 2 recent commitments that we got, we'll talk about a little later, 17 and 19 offers, most of them from Power 5 schools. This is a whole different breed of recruiting than what we've been used to. And the way Gus has set it up, we've all heard about Bounce House Weekend, and the way that he set it up is with a different level of mentality. And again, this is an experienced winning coach that understands how to recruit at a high level versus what we've had in the past after George Leary, which is 2 guys that are being a head coach for the first time. They don't necessarily have the background or the understanding of how to do this at that higher level. I mean, they both just stepped into jobs at that higher level. So we've been the benefactor of that. You've got someone who's motivated. He's got a good team of people around him that are great in recruiting. And we're going to see the fruits of all of that labor. I mean, we've never seen anything like it here at UCF. You see who's on campus. You see it on social media. And I'm with you 100%. I am extremely excited to see who signs on the dotted line in December.
Yeah, and don't be surprised if some bigger names than you're expecting even that had those offers for those big, I hate to say big schools because none of them are bigger than UCF. There's no bigger schools than UCF. UCF is the biggest school, in college as far as enrollment goes. So I hate to say bigger, but more money
brands.
Spending.
We're comparing brands.
Yeah, money spending, schools, I guess. So, I'm horribly excited about it. So let's get on with, speaking of money, let's get on with Ask Knightline. Ask Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, well, the Twitter questions today for Ask Knightline were a little thin just because I think it's Father's Day and a lot of you are doing things with your families and not on Twitter. But Black and Gold Ed was on Twitter this morning, and he asked, is Mark Daniels right on UCF being forever away from a Power 5 invite, as he writes in his article a couple of weeks ago or days ago? I don't know about this. Is going to be a conversation I think that we can have. This probably will be a little bit of a lengthy conversation. Roger, I'm going to give you the first shot at this, and I want to hear what you have to say, how you answer this. I mean, just because I think that we're going to talk back and forth about it for a little while, because I may not agree with what you say.
It's a big question, and for those of you that haven't read the article, I actually did read the article, and there are a lot of points for and against expansion, right? So a couple of things that are for expansion. Obviously, there's inequity in the number of teams that are in each conference, right? So the Big 12 conference has the fewest number of teams versus someone like the ACC who has 14, right? So there's 12 spots that are available. 6 of them would go to the highest rated champion, and then everybody else gets to scramble for the rest. Now, conventional thinking is SEC gets 2 or 3 of those spots. So that realistically leaves 3. Big Ten's probably going to get another spot in there somewhere. At least one. So we're really battling over 1 or 2 spots. So the question is, and here's the part we don't know yet, is how much additional money is going to be coming out of this potential playoff change under the new contract? Because this is all going to be negotiated again in 2023. If there's more content, the expectation is it's going to cost more for that content. So there'll be more money to spread around. Now, if you have fewer number of teams, and the Big 12 right now does and plays a round robin format, then you're going to have less chances to have a team that will catch fire every year and take one of those playoff spots. Now, realistically speaking, we have 2 expansion options at UCF right now for a variety of reasons. That's the ACC. Right, is one, and the Big 12 is number 2. If we had a shot, now I'm not saying where I'd want to be, if we had a shot, I would think that it would be the Big 12 because we have more options. The ACC is trying to lure Notre Dame. I would imagine that if they do expand, they'll bring a team in like Notre Dame, so there'll only be 1 spot open. I can't imagine any conference going past 16 teams. So that leaves the Big 12. The thing about the P5 invite, the Big 12 is in a unique position. It's in a bad position as far as number of teams that it has available in its conference to compete for one of those playoff spots.
Maybe we should hold on. Maybe we should start off by reading the first paragraph of this article, just so everybody knows what page we're on if they haven't seen this article, possibly. Okay. So I'm going to read the article, just the first part of the article, just so y'all know what we're talking about, because it can get very confusing. This is what Mark Daniels wrote the other day on the 96.9 The Game on the 18th, Friday. The headline is, UCF gets closer to a playoff but further from expansion. As UCF celebrates a new playoff format that will give 12 teams a chance to win the national championship, there may be something that will elude the Knights that had been a priority. While the path to making the postseason is now a little bit more clear for UCF, the road to a major conference may be closed and stay closed for a long time. One thing the new model for the college football playoff will do is eliminate expansion by any P5 league for a while, a long time, is what he says. So, go ahead. I thought that was important because I was sitting there going, "What is he talking about?" And I'm sure
lots
that
of things.
Yeah,
lots
the rest
lots
of everybody else was probably thinking that right along with me. So
sorry about that, folks.
Well, no, it's a kind of an in-depth conversation, and if you didn't get the gist of it from the beginning, say you didn't read the article, then you wouldn't know really. We just started talking about expansion, and you wouldn't really know what was going on. So basically, we're going to have this, supposedly going to have, it's not set in stone yet. Hopefully they do this because they've gotten everybody horribly excited if they don't, for this 12-team playoff. Moving it from 4, not to 6, not to 8, not to 10, but to 12. And that would give UCF a much, much, much better chance. The winner from the American the winner of the conference most likely will be in the playoff from now on. It's just the way that it unfolds because it has the top 6 conference champions basically, and then there's going to be seeds at the beginning, and the first 8 won't have to play the first game, but there will be the rest of everybody else will have to play to see who plays them, basically, if that makes any sense. A tournament. It'll be much more of a tournament instead of just a playoff with 4 teams, an invitational playoff. But Mark Daniels is saying in this thing that that's going to make the Power 5, quote unquote, Power 5 teams not feel that it's important to expand anymore. And that we're only getting $7 million a year and they're getting $30 million a year. That's the question for me.
I mean, it's not really 30, it's more than that. And here's the reason why, especially with the Big 12, because it's $30 million from their regular TV rights. Then they've got their payouts from NCAA tournament credits and other TV stuff. In the Big 12's case, they also have third tier rights that they're selling on their own. So really, when we're talking about this and adding someone to the pie, you're right in the sense that I think the payout was something like $37 million from the media rights deal more recently. And the reason for that is because, and this is where I was getting to before you rightly put this in context for everyone, like the one advantage that the Big 12 has is it has fewer mouths to feed. So even though their media contract isn't as expensive as, say, the Big 12, or I'm sorry, the SEC or the Big 10, but up until this point, they've actually been earning more per school. Now, that's getting ready to change with all of these contracts coming up. But that means it's harder for someone like UCF to prove their value. Now, the Big 12 recently had their contract. They asked for an early contract negotiation. ESPN shut this down. This is before all this playoff news came out. I'm sure that was by design. The question is going to be, can adding someone like UCF earn enough money in additional content and potential playoff spots to be able to justify adding them? As each school gets paid more money, okay, and understanding
my question is, why does it matter, though, if we have the opportunity to get into the playoff? Why does it matter if we're in a Power 5 league or not, besides the money? It doesn't matter.
The money's the only thing, really, if you look at it from that perspective. And you would get some additional opportunities, because
I guarantee
no matter what,
you, if we were in that national championship game, for real, in the national championship game, donors, sponsors, everybody else would come out of the freaking woodwork to give us the money that we need. The other thing is, I don't think a lot of people understand what that money means and what that money would go for. Like, why would we need all that money to field a competitive team? First of all, we don't, honestly. We don't need all that money to field a competitive team. If you're not paying your guys with McDonald's sacks, under the table, I guess. I mean, yes, it gives more money for training and facilities and all that stuff, but we've fielded a very competitive team over the years without that money. You know what I'm saying? I would rather do it without that money. I would rather be the little guy, be the underdog, and make it into those big games and get the payout from it.
Well, there's an argument to be made, and I hate to say this way because it denigrates the conference that we're in the AAC. There's an argument to be made that we have an easier path to go through the AAC and make it, because now you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be the top-rated conference champion. And 5 out of 7 years, the AAC has gone to the New Year's Six Bowl. And I don't see that changing at any time. In fact, last year,
well, the
Pac-12
New Year's Six Bowls are going to be part of the playoff now.
No, I get it. But my point is that the committee and everybody else who's involved with that has rated us higher than the other quote-unquote G4 conferences. So our champion has consistently been higher. And if it's the highest ranked champion that fills that 6th spot, because I'm going to assume that the quote-unquote power conferences are going to get 5 of those, right? So that means everybody else, the Mountain West, us, Sun Belt, whomever, we're all vying for that one final spot. We're going to get the benefit of the doubt just because we performed better. And in fact, last year, the Pac-12 was ranked the number 7th conference in football. We were number 6. Right. So,
and that's the whole Power 6 thing and blah, blah, blah. But they've basically, by opening up to 12 teams, they've basically said that one conference from the G5 is now a P5, except they're not getting the money that the P5 is getting. You know what I'm saying? That's basically, they're opening it up with 12 teams and six conference champions. I mean, there's no doubt that we will be the American will be the highest ranked out of those 6. I mean, if you look at the polls from the last 4 years or whatever, we would have been in that. The champion from the American over all the other G5 conferences were ranked higher than any of the rest of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it almost means if you win the conference in the American, you're in the playoff. And then maybe one other one that's in there, or a couple other ones now that it's 12.
Well, the other thing that's happening too, though, at the same time, the conference announced and Noresco announced, I think it was last week, that we're actually applying for autonomous status. Because remember, guys, we talk about this Power 5, Group of 5, all this crap all the time, right? But the reality of it is the only thing that separates us as the AAC from the quote-unquote Power 5 from an NCAA standpoint, right, is the autonomy designation. We've applied for it. So we'll see what happens there.
What is that for people that don't understand? What is the autonomy?
Autonomy means there is a group of 5 schools, which is where the Power 5 came from, right? So there's the 5 quote-unquote power conferences, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, and the SEC. They have a different status in the NCAA. One, they have more voting rights. So their votes are worth more than a quote-unquote member G5 conference. The second thing is they have the ability to enact their own rules amongst the 5. Now, the group of 5 can come back and say, and the American has done this with every single rule they've passed. They can come back and say, hey, we will adopt your rule, right? and incorporate it into what we're doing, but they have no say in creating those new rules. And the argument at the time was, we make a lot more money, right? And we can't enact some of the things we want to do for the benefit of our student athletes because the Sun Belt doesn't make as much money as we do, so their schools can't afford it. So what the American has done this entire time is they've said, hey, we're going to adopt every rule that you put into place. And so far, the American has done that. And because of that, they're saying that they've been building that case for the autonomy. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but that's where the Power 5 label came from, because they were saying, hey, we make so much more money than everybody else. We're being hindered by the rest of the 5 conferences. So we want to have our own designation. That passed. The bone that was thrown to the G5 was, hey, we'll give you an automatic not BCS, a New Year's Six Bowl bid to go along with that if you allow us to do this. So that's starting the AAC's migration. And to your point, I do think long term it will occupy that Big East-ish type of position within the college football framework. However, I will say this, no matter what, I think from a fan perspective, and I'm going to speak for myself here, I would much rather be in the ACC playing Clemson, Georgia Tech, Florida State, even Duke, versus playing ECU, Temple, etc. That's just me. I think that elevates the brand even further than what we have, because let's be truthful about this. There's a pecking order even within the Power 5. And then to get schools that we really want to play, like Florida or someone like that, we have to be considered on that same level so that if they win, it means something for them. Or if they lose, they're not losing too much prestige. So,
well, I think that if we get into this 12, which we should, maybe not this year, but not this year. It's not going to happen. It's 2023 that this is going to start supposedly. But I think that if an American team gets in there and has the opportunity to play these other teams in the playoff and goes fairly deep into it, maybe gets in the national championship. It's 4 games. It's 4 games. You have to win 4 games to get to the national title if you're one of the 12. Well, not the first 6, because the first 6 don't have to play the first game. They have a bye.
I think it's the first 4 that don't have to play the first game.
Well, first 4, whatever. The rest of them have to play 4 games to get to the national title game. And Mark Daniels says that in here. It says that does not mean UCF can't win a national title. If you make the playoff, you just need to win 4 games. The size of your athletic budget means nothing at that point. So I feel like if we go in there and beat those teams that were supposedly better than us, supposedly like Power 5 schools, you go in there and beat a couple of those guys and it'll all fall into place for the American. If it's the American teams that are consistently going in there and beating those teams, you're going to see that the American has something for all the rest of those guys. And they're not inferior. Our scheduling is not inferior, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? I think that's going to go a long ways if we can go in there and go deep into those playoffs.
I agree with that. I think perception would definitely change. I mean, even if it's not UCF every year, let's say it's a rotation of UCF, Cincinnati, and
whoever
Houston.
it is from the American.
Yeah.
I'm not talking just UCF at this point. I said for an American team going in there and beating the Power 5 teams, which we do on a regular basis anyway.
Yeah, the conference does pretty well.
Yeah, the conference does well against Power 5 teams. We're not that far off from those guys at all. And I think that this playoff will show that unless they throw games in one way or another. And you know how that works. Referees and everything else. So I think that there's going to be a separation, though, of teams in the American that can do that, though. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be pretty easy and obvious to see who the elite teams in the American are in every other conference. That's not a Power
I think it
5.
already is.
It is.
To be honest.
Yeah, it is. Cincinnati, Memphis, UCF, Houston. Probably, and those are the ones that Mark Daniels, says in there as well. So
Weird putting Memphis's name in there. They were so bad for so long.
well, and I still don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, they would have technically, when we were looking at that, and I don't have the link anymore, but there was a thing that CBS did a couple of weeks ago, and ESPN did it also with the tournament moving to 12.
Yeah,
and
we would have made it 3 times
in the last 7 years, 3 times.
Yep.
We would have.
Correct.
UCF would have.
Correct.
Those other years, though, it would have been Cincinnati, Houston, and Memphis making.
Correct.
So of the past 7 years, if we were at a 12-team playoff, the American would have had one team in there every single time. 7 years. So, I mean,
not every single. There was 1 year that we wouldn't have. 6 out of the 7.
I mean, I don't know what I'd have to look back at the article, but Memphis was in there a couple of times. Cincinnati was in there a time or two. Houston was in there once, I think. There was the year that the Americans split the championship, or I don't know. I can't remember what it was, but Memphis, that's how they got in that one time. I'd love to find the article. I had a link to it. I don't know if I have it anymore. I can try to find it. Go ahead and talk, I guess. I'll look for that.
No, listen, the reality is it's 2 separate questions, right? So the original question was, okay, do you think that this stops expansion? I think that...
I don't necessarily think it does.
I don't either. It's just a question of what are the reasons for expansion, because if it's monetarily driven, if the more money that's being thrown at the conferences, as we move along, the higher the bar is for someone like UCF to come over. So we're not, with this format, there's no longer an incentive to have divisions. And I think divisions are going to go the way of the dodo bird for most of the conferences. One of the things that people were trying to push the Big 12 into doing, which was to add folks so that they would have divisions. So that basically eliminates that reason for expansion, right? So if there's not a monetary advantage, or the bar is too high for a monetary advantage, right? And this is where what you were talking about, which is brand building and perception building through making the playoffs and maybe winning a national championship or something. You see this in the basketball brands, right? All the time with Villanova.
No one would have known
like
who Gonzaga was.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't have won that tournament.
Exactly.
Or gone really deep in it the first, couple times or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Nobody would know who they are if they hadn't have done that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% with that. And that's what I'm saying. You can build that brand over time, right? But again, there's inherent value in that as well. If the ACC is a perfect example of it. You can't just have a good football brand to go to the ACC. You also have to have a good basketball brand to do that. And that's one of the areas where we have some work to do, right?
I found the article, by the way.
Okay.
So in 2014, the G5 representative would have been Boise, because that was the year that they did really well. That was the last time, really, that it wouldn't have been an American team. 2015... it would have been Houston at number 12. 2016, it would have been... oh, there may not be one in this one either. An American team. I don't see one, to be honest with you, which is kind of weird. 2017, obviously, it would have been us. And then they say that our opponents in 2017 would have been... This is how they said it. Also, self-proclaimed national champion UCF no longer complains about getting left out of the playoff. Instead, it has to beat Alabama and Ohio State to get into the semis. Ouch. So we would have had to play Ohio State and Alabama. 2018, it would have been us as well, and that we would have been the number 8 seed. And we would have had to play... Oh, boy. Where is it? We would have had to play Alabama. That would have been Alabama. We would have had to play Washington at first. So it would have been Washington. We would have had to beat Washington and then Alabama to get into the playoff. And then 2019, it would have been Memphis at number 12. They would have had to play Georgia and then Oklahoma. And then obviously 2020, it would have been Cincinnati, and then Coastal Carolina would have been in there as well. And Cincinnati would have had to play, let me see here, Georgia and then Alabama as well. So it's an article, it's entitled, I got to get to the top again. College Football Playoff Expansion, 12-team historic simulations, storylines, and more, if you want to go find that. But it would tell you how it would have played out, basically, if since 2014 there were a 12-team playoff instead of a 4-team playoff.
Right. Yeah, and going back to what we're talking about here, there's two questions. Does it really, does this forever mean that we're forever away from a P5 invite? I don't think that's the case. I will tell you this. It's right now, it's not the only reason for someone to expand, okay, is at the higher levels, if someone like Notre Dame says, hey, I'm finally ready to join a conference, right? Then the ACC is going to expand with one team, okay? Other than that, the only other independents that are out there that are worth anything is BYU. And the AC may want to try to scoop up BYU. And in fact, their AD Holmo just said that they were open to a conference affiliation, whereas in the past they weren't. So I think the only chance that they have is because the Big 12 already passed on them for a lot of their religious things that they have going on, was what they cited last time, because there was a lot of hot water there. I don't think the Big 12 is an option for them. So that leaves the Mountain West and the AAC. They're not getting into the Pac-12. So I think from an expansion perspective, it makes it, in my mind, more likely for the AAC to expand to potentially grab someone like BYU. For the Big 12,
everybody's going to need to be a 14-team conference. I mean, it seems like.
Well, they don't have to be. I mean, if we're doing away with divisions, then they won't have to be. The only reason to be a 14-team conference is for TV inventory. So the only reason that the Big 12 would have to expand right now, given the current climate and assuming this goes through, right, is there's two reasons.
What if a couple of teams, like Mark Daniels said in this article, what if a couple of teams leave from the Big 12 and go to one of the other conferences? Maybe they make a 16-team conference.
Well, I would see if a couple of Big 12 teams leave, I definitely see them expanding. And we're definitely on that candidate list, us, Cincinnati.
Would you really want to do that if the American can add some quality teams and put the Big 12 to bed, basically? You know what I'm saying? If the American has better football teams and better teams, besides, the Big 12 isn't going to have much. They'll have some basketball. If Oklahoma and like Texas or, there's a couple of teams there that if they left, the Big 12 would for football would be a horrible conference. The American would be much better, a much better conference. I mean, if it wasn't for Oklahoma and maybe one other team in the Big 12, they're not worth much in football. You know what I'm saying?
I would disagree with that, and here's where I'm going to go with it. I think it's much more likely that the Big 12 cannibalizes the AAC than the other way around because they already have a higher dollar contract. Even if their contract gets moved and slashed in half, it's way more than what the AAC's is. And I'd also think, and I'd also argue that the brands that are in the Big 12 right now, let's say you remove Oklahoma and Texas and they don't take anybody with you. So you have OSU.
The Big 12 would implode. The Big 12 would implode if those two teams left.
I don't think that it'd implode. I think it would have a lower dollar amount.
I think it would completely implode, and all those teams would try to go someplace else. That's what almost happened the last time. It just depends on how big the conferences want to be. There's no rule that you have to be a 12-team or a 14-team conference. You could be 16, 18, 20. There's no rule that says you can't be a super conference.
There's not, but it becomes, one, you have to have somebody to pay for that, and number two,
ESPN. I mean, the television contracts will pay for that. I mean,
I don't think they would, to be honest.
I think that
you run into the same thing. I think you run into the same thing that the SWAC did when they tried to do that.
I think the AAC is far more potent than the Big 12 if Texas and Oklahoma were to leave. I feel like it is, personally, especially in football. Those are the two teams
I think from a brand
that are
value
holding the Big 12
perspective
together.
I think from the brand value perspective, you've got let's run through them. You've got West Virginia, right? You've got Oklahoma State.
I know who the teams are in the Big 12.
No, I know, but I'm just for the benefit of the listeners. You've got Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. You've got Kansas State, you've got Iowa State, you've got whomever. All right. Anyway, let's just use these guys. No, I know who they are, but I don't want to go through the whole list.
Baylor, you left out.
Well, yeah, Baylor, yes, Baylor, because Baylor left TCU, obviously, because TCU left the Big East to go to the Big 12. But anyway, the whole point is all of those brands that I just listed, I'm sorry, are better football brands than ECU.
And Kansas State are better than the American teams?
I didn't say better in football. I said better brands.
You think they're better brands? I mean,
than the ECU?
I disagree with some of that. No, I'm not just ECU. I mean, I don't know. I disagree in a way. My personal opinion, I've been around the Big 12 my entire life. And if Texas leaves the Big 12 is in major, major problems. That's what the whole hubbub was before. And it almost, when they were trying to expand the last time, it was because Texas got a better TV deal than all the rest of them did. And they still have a better TV deal. They have the network. They have the Longhorn Network. And nobody else in the Big 12 has the Longhorn Network. You know what I'm saying? That's why
Nebraska left, too, because Oklahoma and some of the others were trying to put together.
And Oklahoma was going to leave, and they were going to go. Oklahoma and the Texas teams were all going to go and form their own conference. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I remember the Pac-12 trying to come in and scoop up Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and OSU. And at that time, what they were trying to do was the Big 12 had actually reached out to the Big East about a merger into a new conference.
So the Big East was what is the American at this point.
Correct.
So they were considered, before the whole Power 5 thing, they were in there. They were part of that. They just weren't getting the money that some of the other conferences were. Before
Thanks
this whole,
to the cows.
Yeah. I mean,
they spearheaded the $1.7 billion.
This whole thing makes me so mad, to be honest with you.
Why?
The whole thing, just I really think that I'm trying to say it the right way. The disparity or whatever, or it's probably the wrong word.
No, disparity. You're right.
Well, it may not be for what I'm trying to say.
Oh, gotcha.
the money differences are huge the American compared to the Power Five.
Right.
There's no reason that it needs to be. There isn't. There's no good reason. There's just as good football and everything else. Brands, I understand. Those brands, if they had the money that the Power Five had, could make themselves into bigger brands. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying this. I just
I'm not
don't
saying
see...
that you are. I'm just saying that this is what makes me mad about it. It makes me mad that for some reason, those schools get all the freaking money, and the American and the rest of the G5 gets left out. I've said this multiple times. Honestly, I wish that the Power Five would go on by themselves and we could have our own league, to be honest with you. I totally
I'm not
believe
on that
that
train unless they take us with them.
Well, I mean, if they take us with them, that's fine. If they don't, there needs to be something different. There needs to be something different and make the level comparable with the rest of it. If they want to be a pro conference and they want to do all these things and be autonomous and all this other stuff, then, let them. But have a national championship for everybody else, is what I'm saying.
Well,
if they want to have a 4-team
championship today,
if they want to have a 4-team playoff and not let anybody else in, and now they're supposedly going to change that. But if they wanted to keep that 4-team playoff thing that they had, that wouldn't let anybody else in, basically. I mean, there's never been a team from anywhere else but a Power 5 conference in that tournament or in that playoff. Why wouldn't you get all the rest of the teams together and form your own freaking league?
Because then the perception of your league and your schools goes down, no matter what you think. It's almost like creating a new division 1AA, division 2A, whatever it was, when they did that back in the 70s and 80s. They did the exact same thing, and then everybody had to claw their way back up into division 1A. So, to me, if I'm UCF, I would much rather be in a league, no matter what, or a division that's in the same division as Texas.
Not if we don't ever get to play them.
LSU.
If we never get to play those teams, what difference does it make?
Well, if we don't get to play them, we're still playing the same teams. At least we can say we're in the same division as them. To me, that's a perception issue. I have a problem if we're now on a substandard division, especially considering all of the things you just said as far as the AAC is concerned.
Yeah, well, I'm a guy that watches all the different levels of football. So I watch the FCS, I watch the FBS, I watch Division 2, Division 3. There's a lot of good football teams in there. And we've seen numerous times how the FCS teams can come in and really any given Saturday or whatever other day that it is can beat a lot of the teams that they're not supposed to beat. You know what I'm saying? So,
and I would agree if it was just about football, but it's not. It's about the prestige of the university and opening up that front door to have more applicants in. The applicants for UCF when we went to the Fiesta Bowl went up 122%. So that's what it's about. And you do that to be in the same, not just academic, but also athletic prestige as the other universities that are out there. So I don't see any reason, any advantage for UCF to do that.
Perceived.
Well, it's perceived. It may be perceived, but you know what? We have an opportunity right now to play in a BCS or not a BCS.
So
BCS.
Change the perception. So it would need a strong freaking leader to change the perception. We don't have that in the American, unfortunately. We don't have that guy. We need to get somebody else. We've been saying that for a long time, I think. Mike Oresco, that goes missing for months and years at a time.
He fired off against the Pac-12 this week after they came out and said all P5 should be automatically entered.
Well, yeah, where has he been since then, though? Where was he in 2017 when we were fighting and clawing? 2018, he was missing.
I'm not disagreeing.
We were almost ready to put his face on a milk carton. He was missing. So he doesn't help anything. Like, I don't understand why the American pays this guy. I really don't, because I mean, yes, he got us the minuscule amount more in the payout from ESPN on our deal. Oh, this stuff makes me so mad. I knew that this would be a heated conversation. It's not really a heated conversation between us, but it's just this topic. I absolutely hate this topic. I hate talking about the difference in money versus the Power Five and expansion and all this stuff. This is like, it's probably why this question was asked, just to make Andrew, because they knew that Andrew would go a little crazy talking about it.
Well, I can tell you this. I mean, college football is not what it was in the 80s when the Alabamas of the world said, I'm not allowing the NCAA to only show my football game once or twice a year. Right. And so at that time, they filed suit and said it's antitrust and said, hey, we want to be able to negotiate our own TV contracts. That's what's happened. OK.
Why isn't it antitrust for the American then and the rest of for the G5 and the rest of college football?
I would agree with you, except the last time that this happened. Well, first of all, it's not, the playoff is not an NCAA sanctioned playoff. Let's be 100% real about that.
And that's the real difference that needs to happen. The NCAA needs to show some balls and take it back over. And that's not going to happen because of the money that ESPN provides. That's really where this whole thing lies. The problem is that the NCAA does not have control of this championship. It's up to a committee.
It would require the schools themselves to give up the ability to negotiate their own TV rights for that championship. And I don't see them doing that because they have too many advantages in the system that exists, especially with the autonomy classes, right?
Well, that was the first mistake. Then you shouldn't have made those autonomy classes.
I agree. And here's the second mistake. The G5 didn't stick to their guns and said, "Hey, give us that BCS bowl, and you guys can do whatever the heck, or that BCS bowl, and you guys can do whatever the heck you want." That turned into the New Year's Six bowl, and the playoff was all of a sudden exclusionary. You can't file an antitrust suit if you sign off on it.
Yeah, that was because of people like Mike Oresco that laid down to the.
Well, they weren't even going to give us that at the time.
I know.
They just wanted to completely kick that. Part of that, too, was kicking the Big East completely out of, or former Big East, or the remnants of the Big East, or whatever you want to say, completely out of power status. That was the other part about it, because they didn't want to share the money. It meant more money concentrated in higher brands, which is what this is all about. It's not about college football. It's about maximizing revenue. That's it. And at the end of the day, what they've come to realize now is that if they exclude too much of the rest of the potential fan base, nobody was watching the championship. Comparatively speaking, not as many people as they thought were watching the national championship or the playoff because people were excluded. Nobody else had a chance. Look no further than the NCAA March Madness tournament to see how much interest and how many dollars are out there if you include everyone, right? Or at least give everyone a shot. So now this is what they're seeing. They're going back to it. And I'm not unconvinced, because this is a tax shelter for them as well. I'm not unconvinced that a lot of this has to do with the fact that they don't want to be sued after this contract cycle, because guess what? The G5 now have the ability to not sign the next contract cycle and say no. And if they don't, and if they stick to their guns, or if they decide to push the antitrust nuclear button after the contract expires, they can do that. And with everything that's going on with Rafer versus Alston and all of those other things that the Supreme Court has been litigating in the court system, and have been siding with the players on all this stuff, they don't want to fight that battle. So I don't see any other way for them not to allow this to happen. They're in a better position. The G5 is in a better position now. I mean, they didn't even think the conference would survive as far as the American is concerned the last time we went around into this stuff. Because that was at the time when Syracuse left and West Virginia left and Louisville left and Rutgers left. Everybody was leaving. They left us for dead. We had a $2 million a year contract, which was barely more than we were making in Conference USA. Yeah. So,
well, it's come a long way since then.
Absolutely.
And those teams, the far majority of them have not done very well in the conferences that they're in now as well.
No, I agree.
So
I just think, back to the original point, do we think that forever this locks UCF away from a P5 invite? No,
I don't at all.
For the reasons that Andrew mentioned, is that I think we can continue to build our brand through having access to the playoff to the point where we're worth it.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully Mike Oresco or hopefully somebody else will get us into that. We'll make the American somehow be involved in this power, whatever it is, power 6, power 5, whatever.
Well, I think by default we will, because 5 out of the 7 years we were the representative. And in fact, it says something about the Pac-12 that they're out there trying to push the narrative that Power 5 conferences should automatically get a berth. Yeah. And that was shut down very quickly. Oresco posted an article about that, or gave an interview about that, and said that basically they were laughed at when that happened because nobody else is worried about being in the playoff except for the Pac-12 for the automatic berths.
Yeah.
So that tells you something in of itself of what the Pac-12 situation is right now.
Yeah.
If anything, the American, if it makes the playoff a few times and has some success, that perception could pick off the Pac-12's perception.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we've talked way too long about this. I'm sorry. We're 56 minutes in and we haven't even done a commercial yet. My people are going to be mad at me. So we're going to do that, and then we'll be right back. Probably Brandon Helwig next. So stick around for that.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com. If you haven't figured it out yet, I love Tijuana Flats. I would love them even if they weren't a partner with us on the Knightline Sports Network. They have all kinds of great Tex-Mex food, and it's fresh, by the way. Made to order burritos, tacos, enchiladas, chimichangas, quesadillas, bowls, nachos, and taco salads. And if you haven't tried the queso, you are completely missing out. It is the best queso that I've ever had in my life. Absolutely hands down. And the sauce bar that they have, everything from wild to mild in there. Absolutely awesome, awesome stuff. Not only do I love the food at Tijuana Flats, but I love the company, a UCF-born company. And they give back to the community with the Justin Queso Foundation. So head to your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. All right, joining us now, one of the guys that knows the absolute most about what's going on, the pulse of Knight Nation, Brandon Helwig from Rivals.com. Brandon, what's going on, my man? It's been very, very busy in UCF Nation, Knight Nation this week with, for the past month, really, since recruiting official visits opened back up. What's been going on, though? I know that it's hard and heavy over there.
Yeah, it's been a crazy month, but we kind of expected it would be like this because, it's been like 15 months basically since recruits were able to make recruiting visits. We went through an entire recruiting class of players who, they signed with the school, yet most of them never visited and never, met their future coaches face to face. So everyone kind of circled that June 1st on the calendar. That's kind of when the floodgates opened and everyone could start having visits again. So it's been crazy. I can't even tell you right now off the top of my head how many players total, have been at UCF. They've had a couple official visit weekends, though, the past couple weeks. Last week, they had something called Bounce House Weekend. They had like 17 official visitors, I think 15 or 16 unofficial visitors on top of that. Basically, all those are, top tier, top rated guys they really want in their recruiting class. Had another weekend of official visits this past weekend. Have another weekend coming up. Just really been crazy. As far as UCF, they have 4 commitments so far. 2 of those players actually committed earlier this spring. 2 of them just actually occurred this past Friday, guys who had visited for Bounce House Weekend. And I know they're expecting a lot more guys to kind of jump on board, as we get maybe past June. I think that's what a lot of guys are doing. They just want to take all the visits they can. During this month of June, it gets to another dead period in July, and that's when I think a lot of these players who have been taking visits are going to make their decisions. And I'm sure we'll see a lot more names start to pop up by then. But it's just been crazy. There's been literally hundreds of guys have visited between the camps and teams coming by. There's literally been hundreds of visitors this month to UCF, and that's not really a lie.
Well, Brandon, you're 100% correct on that. It's been humming, and we've been following it closely, and you've been doing a great job covering it. Just kind of back it off and not speaking to specifics, but this is a whole new experience that's been designed by UCF and by Gus, wholly different than what the official visit experience has been. Can you kind of walk through for the audience what that OV experience looks like and feels like and what the recruit goes through, just so people understand, because we know we're hunting for a lot bigger game these days, and we've upped our game on the recruiting front. So can you kind of walk us through what they were experiencing when they were on campus?
Yeah, the basic difference, like anyone can visit, anyone could just drop by for an afternoon, hang out with the coaches, get a tour, whatnot. But the difference with an official visit is that the school pays for it. Whether it's somebody that's, out of state and they have to fly in with their family, when it's an official visit, the school is allowed to pay for the airfare, for any transportation costs. When they're on campus, they can pay, for them to stay in a hotel. They pay for meals. So that's the biggest difference, obviously, between an official and an unofficial. With UCF, it's been, most schools are mostly standard with what they do. Players typically arrive on a Friday afternoon, something like that. They usually head right to the facilities. Maybe they eat dinner. I know when I talked to an official visitor today, he said, on Friday night, they went out to a place, had dinner. They went bowling. On Saturday, they actually went out to Disney Springs and went out to an Irish restaurant on Disney property, which was interesting. It was a smaller weekend, so I think they could do that. Last weekend with Bounce House Weekend with like 30 plus guys, they didn't really leave campus. They just had meals catered inside the Bounce House Stadium. But last week was kind of fun from talking to the guys. They did some different things. They had like some games and activities just to kind of, get to know each other a little bit better. On Saturday afternoon, they had like a scavenger hunt where, you got on a golf cart and kind of went around campus looking for different things. They had a food eating competition where guys were trying to devour cake and pie and different things and see who won there. And I'm not really sure what happened. There was some sort of karaoke event or something, and it kind of ended in a rap battle. If anyone, UCF fans may have seen these tweets here in the last week between defensive coordinator Travis Williams, who kind of freestyled, and offensive line coach Herb Hand, who was giving his rendition of Sir Mix-a-Lot's "Baby Got Back." So that was happening last Saturday. But yeah, they'll do a photo shoot in the stadium where, people see these photos all the time. Guys try on the full uniforms. Guys love those space jerseys, as everyone has noticed. They like trying those on. They do a little photo shoot and just kind of have fun that way. And there's also time spent, with the current team with a player host. So there's if you're a member, obviously if you UCF right now, you'll get assigned a recruit. So maybe you go out with them like on Friday or Saturday night, you kind of bring them around, where you live, the dorm room, you introduce them to other players and kind of make them feel at home, part of the team. And usually on Sunday mornings, for the most part, the guys have had an opportunity to kind of, get to know Gus and his wife maybe a little bit on Friday and Saturday. But, before they leave, they kind of have that old sit down meeting in Gus's office. And I think his wife Christy's usually in there, and they just kind of talk about how everything went, what's going on with recruiting. And maybe that's when a commitment may or may not happen. I think maybe this past weekend some guys may have committed on Sunday and just waited a few days to announce, and that kind of happens before they leave. But yeah, that's basically just the brief synopsis of what might happen in an official visit weekend.
Well, that's interesting because I didn't know that they could pay for all that stuff. I didn't know that they flew them in. I mean, they have to, I guess, fly the family, the parents with them and all that stuff. That's pretty incredible, actually. And I guess that I never really realized, I guess, where the money goes. You know what I'm saying? So the money does go towards recruiting. I'm sure that there's some kind of a cap, I guess, that they...
Yeah. Now, players themselves can take up to 5 official visits, and schools can host up to 56 official visits in a year. Now, this will be a little bit different because I think June visits can maybe count back towards last year. And obviously every school had 0 visits this past year prior to June. So I don't know. Most schools don't have 56 visits in a year. They usually don't need that many. You're signing a recruiting class.
It sounds like Gus is going to do the 56 this year. I mean,
yeah, he might actually. Gus might, but most schools don't usually hit that number. But you would have up to 56, and you have this thing with transfer portal being such a big part of recruiting, and maybe you're not going to be signing at 25 as much. Maybe you're going to be signing 20 or less. So that might be the norm for a lot of places. If those other spots are filled up with transfers,
well,
that may not necessarily take up a visit.
Yeah, that brings up another question. Then, are transfers able to do official visits like that, or are there different rules for that?
I'm not exactly sure how the rules work. Most transfers in this cycle have kind of already, made their decisions, well, at least with UCF anyway, before we got to June, and guys are just arriving in June to move in. Could they have a time period when in transfers take an official visit? I think maybe they would be. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure how that differs from the high school prospects. But yeah, maybe when we're in a non-dead period, non-COVID pandemic time period, this, maybe next winter or something, and, guys could take visits, and while they're looking to transfer, maybe that is something that might happen.
Yeah, so much has changed with all this, though, but it seems like the kids are absolutely loving it. And there's big names, too. I mean, names that we don't normally see visit UCF or visiting UCF. 5-star guys, 4-star guys. We get our fair share of 4-star guys, but it just seems like Gus is hitting it out of the park with these guys, and the kids are really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's just going to be a big question of,
can we land some of those guys?
UCF? Yeah, who does UCF land? And my whole stance on this is, we'll see what happens, but they're not necessarily recruiting. Yeah, they are recruiting for right now. But like I said, with the transfer portal, you're also kind of recruiting for a year from now or 2 years from now. I mean, talk about Bounce House Weekend. Obviously, a lot of those guys came from the state of Alabama, players that were already, close, had a good connection with Gus Malzahn, Travis Williams when they were at Auburn. So that relationship was there. So they came down to UCF to visit. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. Some of those guys may end up at Alabama. They may end up at Auburn. They may not end up at UCF now. But let's say a year from now, 2 years from now, maybe they're not happy. There's a loaded depth chart, whatever. They need a change of scenery. They're going to remember, I went down to UCF. I had a great time, Gus Malzahn, I liked him a lot, obviously. I'm just going to transfer to UCF now. I'm telling you, of all these guys who have visited this month, we're going to see one or more, come back to UCF. I don't know when, maybe in a year or two, like I said, but that's kind of what you're doing now. You're recruiting. Recruiting never stops. And with the transfer portal, it's not over. Say if that highly rated, 4 or 5 star guy goes to Alabama, well, he may be coming back this way in another year or two.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. We've talked about that quite a bit on this show as to, you're not recruiting for today, you're recruiting for tomorrow as well. Now, 2 of the recruits that were on campus actually did commit while after their visit. One of them was 3-star defensive end Jamal Johnson. Another was 3-star wide receiver Tyler Griffin, who's huge, 6'4", 200 pounds. Talk a little bit about them and how you feel, how big of an impact their commitments could be.
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of the guys that kind of are getting things started a little bit. And obviously, UCF did have 2 prior commitments in March, but as far as Bounce House Weekend, those were guys that, we had kind of heard, maybe close to making a decision and maybe close to committing to UCF. Jamal Johnson is a guy they've been recruiting since they got here. He was formerly committed to Miami at one point, considered kind of a big piece to kind of get that defensive line class going. And Tyler Griffin is a big guy, he's only, haven't even played a senior year yet. He's already like 6'4", has tremendous size playing wide receiver. He's from that Southeast Georgia area. I know they're very excited about those guys. Griffin, had, could have gone to Georgia Tech and a lot of other places. So just kind of some key pieces. And I think they just kind of want to get some guys, committed and kind of get that train rolling of guys coming on board. Like I said, I think some guys are just going to be patient with it. And, they want to take visits. They want to have fun this month of June. But, those were important pieces to kind of get everything going. As I'm sure this class is going to grow, maybe in the next week, but definitely once we get into the first couple weeks of July.
Yeah, so it seems like that, they will land one of these big time players, I believe. I think that they will. I think it'll be shocking to everybody, and UCF will land hopefully a 5-star guy, personally. I would just like to see that happen because it doesn't happen. It only happened once. Houston got the kid, Ed Oliver, and that was a big deal. I think that this would be just as big of a deal, being the second player, 5-star ranked guy in the G5 or whatever. But I just feel like Gus, for some reason, I have a feeling that Gus will get this done. Maybe not this year, maybe it's next year or whatever. I just feel like it's going to happen. And when that does happen, I think that may start a little bit of a trickle-down effect where other guys, see that guy, this 5-star guy, especially now that we have the chance to get into the playoffs. I mean, it's not impossible, I don't think, anymore.
Yeah, this is something I've been saying. I'm the most bullish on UCF recruiting than I ever have been. And even before we get to the playoffs, I think, finally UCF has a staff that can recruit. I think that's something that they really haven't had, a full, complete staff of guys who know how to recruit. And they finally have a head coach with personality. I mean, go back and look at George O'Leary. George O'Leary had a personality, but wasn't necessarily a personality that was conducive to high-level recruiting. Scott Frost didn't have much of a personality. Heupel had zero personality. Those guys just weren't. They're not Gus. Okay, let's put it that way. They weren't Gus. They don't have the people skills that Gus has. Okay, and a head coach, and I don't know. And they were young coaches, obviously. First time being head coaches when they were at UCF, Frost and Heupel. The ins and outs, what's it takes to recruit. Gus has been around the block a few times. He's been at Auburn. He knows what it is to recruit these high level players. He knows what it takes. So even before we got this playoff news, I had no doubt that Gus will recruit the best that UCF has ever had, because I think that's maybe underachieved. I don't know if that might be too harsh of a word, because you've got so many challenges when you're not Power 5 and whatnot with UCF. But I think UCF, that's one area that I think maybe they could have done a little bit better at through the years, is recruiting. But now we talk about the new playoff system, assuming everything goes through as been reported, if that begins hopefully like
Knock
in 2023. Yeah, if that happens, you can actually sell it. It's going to be hard to recruit guys, get them from going to Florida, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama. Obviously, those are high-level teams that are going to have a great chance at any playoff system there is. But, if you're UCF, if you're recruiting against middle tier or lower tier Power 5, I mean, gosh, UCF under this system would have made the playoffs 3 times the last 7 years. I mean, what about Georgia Tech and NC State and Pitt and like whatever, all these other programs they usually compete against and sometimes lose recruits to? Those schools, I mean, they can say they've got a better chance at the playoff, and maybe they do because it's a 12-team system. But I got to think UCF has a much better chance of reaching the postseason than a lot of these Power 5 schools. And, once I think that starts to dawn on some guys, and of course you got to win conference championships. But, once that happens, I mean, there's really no reason UCF can't recruit at a much higher level than they have been. Of course, the money is a big thing. Obviously, Power 5 schools bring in way more money. But if you're making the playoff, I got to think you're going to have way more advantages than a lot of these schools.
Yeah, Brandon, I think, when you speak about money, name, image, and likeness is also going to be an interesting piece of this, given that eventually the rest of the schools will catch up and get that in place. So that will be another also, in my mind, probably a mini free agency that happened. Now, you were talking about booms that we were expecting. Can you walk us through who else is kind of on your watch list, and then speak a little bit about Quan Lee? He's been really, really active and all over the place on social media. Can you fill us in a little bit on him and who else you're expecting to watch?
Yeah, as far as guys to watch, I think the guys that I just committed on Friday, I think we kind of thought that was going to happen. There's a few other guys I think will eventually come UCF's way. One is a defensive lineman from Lakeland, Keanis Thompson. He's a teammate of Miguel Maldonado, who was UCF's first commitment, actually. Thompson, he was at Miami this weekend. I think he's supposed to go to Texas this upcoming weekend. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I've heard pretty good things that there's a good chance that he eventually will be part of UCF's class. Another player I'm high on his UCF's chances is a local guy from Apopka, Nakai Martinez, a safety. He visited for Bounce House weekend. I don't think he was anywhere this weekend. I think he might have been. First was going to Notre Dame. I think he called that off. He's supposed to go to South Carolina on a visit next weekend. I think he's a 4-star rated guy from a school that's a powerhouse in Central Florida, Apopka. But UCF, I can't even tell you the last time UCF. I don't know if they ever have at least been at Division 1A level assigned a player from Apopka Blue Darters. I feel pretty good about UCF's chances there. A few other guys to kind of watch. I've heard good things about another 4-star linebacker. I think he's from Montgomery, Alabama, TJ Bull Dudley. He was part of that group visiting last week for Bounce House weekend. I feel pretty good about him. We'll see. There's a lot of big names that have been coming through, and who all kind of pops. We'll see. But Quan Lee is the name that you mentioned. He's a receiver from Gainesville. He was always a UCF target. Was always scheduled to visit this weekend. Then a few weeks back, he went and made his commitment to Miami. He's kind of saying what he needed to say he was solid with Miami. But I think, a lot of these guys, they haven't taken visits. They want to take visits. And, I'm not entirely sure what kind of communication he had with the Miami staff. They used to have a policy about not letting commitments take other visits. But, it's a little bit of different time, with no one was able to take visits over the past year. So he decided to visit UCF this past weekend. I know he looked like he had a good time based on his social media, and he was going around on a golf cart or something, having some fun, putting out a video last night. But I know he's very close with the quarterback commitment, Thomas Castellanos. They're pretty tight, and I know he's kind of an extra recruiter. Talking about Thomas, the quarterback for UCF right now with a lot of these guys. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Miami, could they, maybe get annoyed with the fact he was visiting and try to replace him with somebody else? I'm not really sure what's going on there from the Miami side, but I know it's a guy that UCF really wants, and I know things maybe aren't 100% over with him.
Well, and we've pulled guys from Miami before. I mean, it's been one of those things. So once they visit UCF, I think that they don't know really what UCF has to offer, and then they come here. It's just, I think this whole thing has changed so much in the last year, the last 2 years, I guess, but with the transfer portal and everything else, this is all just, the entire thing has changed. Is it harder to follow now as far as you go? Because you follow it a lot closer than I do, or really anybody else does. Does it make it more difficult with transfer, noise and everything else?
A little bit, and I don't have all the answers, and I'm not sure if college staffs really have all the answers in terms of like, say, scholarship management and like, because there's a lot of questions about, you got guys on teams where the COVID year didn't count against their eligibility, and they can come back for another year, and the NCAA says, okay, well, we'll let you have those guys be on scholarship, and then are they going to extend that another year? And you got all these other guys that didn't lose a year of eligibility, and then you bring in all these transfers. And how does that work? Because technically, you're only supposed to sign 25 new players a year, and that would be high school guys or JUCO, and that also applies to transfers coming in. Well, what if you lose a bunch of transfers? There's a lot. Those the most questions I have, and I think a lot of colleges are kind of figuring that out as they go along, especially with the transfer portal being such a big part of it now. I think some of the days about schools signing 25 players a class, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see recruiting classes that are at least from the high school level that are going to be 20 or less, and then guys will colleges will look for guys in the transfer portal, which I think has a trickle down effect that will impact players in high school. There won't be as many offers to go because schools are using them on transfers, and then at the other end of it, there'll be guys who go in the portal and they may not find another school. They're going to realize that their value isn't what they thought it was, that maybe they would have been better off just staying where, even if they're not playing, staying where they are and keeping that scholarship, because there may not be anything there with them for them, and they don't want to play it. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it was, Brandon, it's very interesting. I mean, for me, one of the things I'm thinking about is, as we're kind of talking through that, yes, less available spots for high school players, but that also means less available spots for higher level schools as well. So to me, that means some of these higher ranked players that may have gotten picked up by the Alabamas of the world, Ohio States of the world, they may be getting pushed down to an area where we can compete for those athletes as well. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. Obviously, UCF is the only school that's going to be looking at the transfer portal to kind of plug holes, and they may not have as many spots to kind of stash away some guys, maybe at the bottom of their class that may not necessarily have a chance to play early, and maybe some of those guys would come back towards UCF even in years past anyway. You look at guys like Aaron Robinson and guys who initially went to Alabama, maybe weren't playing and kind of came back that way. So it'll be interesting to see how everything goes, and early signing period obviously was a big change a few years ago. Now transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. I have no idea what's going to happen really with that going forward. So just so many changes that have been happening, and because we talked about the new playoff, kind of exciting and times, just to kind of see how college football will adapt.
Yeah, well, we went all year last year we had a football season, but it wasn't a real football season. We only played, so many games, and there was really no fans at the stadiums and all that stuff. So that season obviously will have, because of the number of games that people played or schools played, we'll have an asterisk by it. But this year, finally, we're going to have an entire football season, I believe. I hope so. Knock on wood again. How excited are you to get back to doing what you do, taking pictures out there, going to press conferences, being able to talk with everybody in person, hopefully? I'm excited, I know. You have to be pretty excited as well.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, knock on wood, hopefully everything is trending that way, and there's no reason to believe it won't be. But yeah, it was just weird last year, and like I said, it was a football season, but it wasn't like a real one. All the Zoom interviews and not ever seeing anybody. I think it kind of started to hit me maybe at the spring game. We started having in-person press conferences with Gus towards the end of spring, because that was one of the first in-person press conferences we had pretty much the entire time since the previous March. I kind of went over there and hung out a couple of days. UCF had some camps, and, they really weren't worried about, protocols or, all that kind of stuff. That wasn't really an issue, and kind of talked to some people face to face, which was cool. And, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the excitement level is going to be through the roof. I know when you look at the message board on UCFsports.com, people are excited. They're, booking their trips. And, Southwest had a big sale the other day. So everyone's like, yeah, I can book that Louisville trip, that Cincinnati trip, going to Navy, a lot of good road trips this year. And everyone's just kind of looking forward to getting back to normal and having a full bounce house and tailgating, which obviously didn't happen last year. And everyone's looking forward to that. So, yeah, it'll be here, and it'll be here before you know it. We're almost to July, and practice will be starting up late July, early August. I mean, before you know it, we're going to be talking about real football coming up, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I got my Louisville stuff all planned, so I'm going to Louisville. Very excited. Tickets are bought, so can't wait.
I will tell you this. It is super exciting and the shortest off season that I recall. I mean, when we're doing these shows and things, it's always tough when that dead period, but baseball extended a little longer, softball extended a little longer. So, with that and everything that's been going on with Gus coming on board and all that, it's been super exciting. One of the people that we've talked about, Andrew and I, has been Gabe's brother from Seminole High School. And along with him, there were 2 additional 3-star defensive backs that are highly rated in the state of Florida, Damari Henderson and Jakari Henderson. We've had great luck with twins. Talk to us a little bit about what our likelihood or how we stand with the trio of the 3.
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned those guys a little bit earlier in terms of guys who, maybe have a good shot to be part of the class. Brandon Moore's brother, Cameron Moore, linebacker, he was here. I think he was here the first day, June 1st, that players can visit. Obviously, UCF's highly recruiting him. And as you mentioned, the twins, pretty much the biggest competition right now for those twins is Miami. And both of them actually arrived in Miami today to begin an official visit. It'll be like a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday official visit, because this is coming up to be kind of like the last week of visits, up through next weekend before it's a dead period. So I think it's kind of a UCF or Miami deal for them. It'll be interesting to see what happens on that visit this weekend. But those are guys who I know are very highly recruited. They were guys who came for Bounce House weekend. They weren't official visits, but they were unofficial visits who kind of dropped by and did all the activities on Saturday alongside the guys who were there officially. So they've been on campus. They've, talked to guys, talked to the coaches and everything. And those are guys that UCF really wants. And yeah, I mean, that'd be an easy way to get your recruiting class. I know the twins are a package deal. I'm not sure if they're necessarily a package deal with Cameron Moore, but yeah, UCF would love to have all 3 and kind of keep that, Sanford Seminole pipeline going.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the regular season and the guys that we already have here. Who are you looking for to really make an impact this year? Maybe a transfer or a new guy, a freshman, or just new to UCF, I guess, because there's so many guys that we did not see during the spring. Obviously, especially all these transfers that are going to be coming in. Who is it that you're looking forward to or think is going to make a huge impact this year?
I guess, we could talk about a lot of different positions of guys because there's a lot of transfers at a lot of different positions. But I tend to think running back. Gus has obviously been big on running the football, and it'll be interesting to see Mark Anthony Richards, who was one of the first transfer commitments for Gus, played with him at Auburn. I'm really curious to see how he looks. He had a really strong end of 2020 for Auburn. Made a lot of plays in that game they had against Alabama. I think he can make a really big impact. The only running back that returns with any sort of experience really is Bentavious Thompson. So obviously there's plenty of room for other running backs to emerge, and I'm kind of curious to see how he looks on the offensive side. And then we look at the defensive side. We're talking about Auburn transfers, pretty much a Big Cat Bryant, defensive end. An all SEC player at Auburn, and to see, defensive line has kind of been a weakness for UCF the past couple of years. And, you add Big Cat Bryant, and he's a big time player. I think this will be his 5th year playing college football. I think he's going to dominate in the American. You add another defensive tackle transfer, Ricky Barber, who had played at Western Kentucky last year for the coach who came over to UCF to coach for Gus, Coach Kenny Martin. Don't let the school fool you. He was a big time freshman All-American this past year at Western Kentucky. He's a big time player, and not exactly a newcomer, but maybe a newcomer in terms of not playing last year is a Kalia Davis, defensive tackle, big big time player 2 years ago. So he was one of the guys that opted out last year. So just knowing three of those guys are going to be on that defensive line, probably all in starting spots. I mean, that's going to be a much improved unit, and I think we're going to see a much better overall defense. The big question really is going to be who's going to replace all those guys in the secondary that went to the NFL. That's kind of the biggest question going forward.
Yeah, and I've been talking about Big Cat the entire time since he signed on with us. That's a huge transfer. He is, like you said, he's going to just tear it up. I think in the American, I think that he will probably. I've already predicted that he'll probably be AAC Defensive Player of the Year, just because I think that he's that special compared to a lot of the other guys. Personally, Isaiah Bowser is another guy that I've been really high on. I cannot wait to see this guy in a UCF uniform. I don't know what role he will play, but he's a Big Ten running back. When you get a Big Ten running back at UCF, that's a big deal. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was a bigger guy, and he's kind of been plagued by injuries through his Northwestern career. I think his freshman year may have been his most productive season up there. But Gus is going to run the ball. He wants different styles of running backs, and I think we're going to see how that all sort of plays out. Gus is obviously going to have the best quarterback I think he ever will have had, at least from a passing standpoint. When you look at Dylan Gabriel, I know Cam Newton was a pretty good runner back in the day when he was offensive coordinator at Auburn, but I think this will be the most complete quarterback, best overall quarterback that Gus will ever have to work with. So it'll be interesting to see, how all that kind of meshes. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Talking about expectations, for this season, I know my expectation, we'll see. It's kind of hard, first, new year under a new system and whatnot, what that means in terms of how quickly everybody can mesh. But, from all reports we're getting, everything's, worked out pretty good in terms of the team buy-in. And I have no reason not to believe that I think UCF should be competing, for a championship, right there alongside Cincinnati.
Brandon, we've kind of talked about a lot on the defense, but on the offensive side of the ball, outside of the running backs, we've had to replace some key people in the receiving corps. And I know that Brandon Johnson is someone that we're going to be leaning on pretty heavily. We've got a bunch of wide receivers that we have coming in. Who do you see? Ryan O'Keefe is someone that's been here for a while that we expect to see more out of. Who do you expect to see starting for us at the wide receiver position, and how can they fill the void that was left by the departures from last year?
Yeah, I think, obviously it's going to be, Flash Robinson, the kind of Jalen Flash Robinson sort of going to take over that number one spot. We saw a lot of him, obviously, last year. You got Ryan O'Keefe, who's been here a couple years already. I think he's going to obviously have an expanded role. Brandon Johnson, that attended, actually, one of the transfers who was actually a Heupel era transfer in terms of committing to that staff and coming in January. He played a very big role this spring. That was kind of the top three, I think, as we had some open practices and obviously the spring game. There are some junior college guys who I think have the potential, to kind of get on the field and then make an impact. Jalen Griffin and Caden Robinson. Kind of going to keep them straight because we've got a couple different Jalens, couple different Griffins, stuff
Robinsons.
And then we've got the Notre Dame transfer. The UCF just got a former 5-star, Jordan Johnson. And, where's he going to factor in? And then that's not even talking about one of the 4-star signees, a guy who actually committed and signed with UCF when they had no coach. And that was Titus from Hawaii, Dylan Gabriel's buddy from out there. And he's been on campus for the last couple of weeks, moving in. I know he didn't play football because no one in Hawaii played high school football this past year. And, I know everyone's excited about him as well. So there's a lot of guys out there that are going to be jockeying for spots. But, I'm kind of leaning towards the three who are the most experienced who have been around. But I'm sure someone else will emerge and have a really big year because, who knows, Jalen Robinson, I think he's kind of thinking I can have a big season and maybe head off to the NFL. And so, you're just going to got to keep that covered stock because, you're going to have to replace guys in year to year.
Yeah, it's going to get really interesting with the transfer portal, even picking up more steam, I believe, than it has in the past. coaches are really going to have to do roster management, which a lot of them have talked about in interviews, different interviews that I've seen. So that's going to be a different deal altogether. So unless you've got anything else, I don't want to keep you too long. I know we had some technical problems earlier that you all may hear at the very beginning there. But Brandon, everybody knows on this show. It's not the radio show, so I don't really have to tell people what you do. Everybody, I think, knows you that listens to this show. But you could, go ahead and tell everybody what you do, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you didn't hear, my name is Brandon Helwig. I'm the longtime publisher of UCFsports.com and covering the team and recruiting for quite a long time now. I got a website, like I said, UCFsports.com. We got some message boards. We got the Dungeon Premium board, which is a fun place. And if you haven't jumped on board, we would love to have you.
Absolutely. We couldn't do this without you, Brandon. You were one of our very first people that supported us, and I greatly appreciate that. And I appreciate you talking with us this evening. And I can't wait to see you out there at the stadium and wave to you from the stands. Maybe get a picture this year. So
it's been great to be on. Always a fan of you and what you've been able to do. You were kind of the trailblazers in this podcast community of UCF.
There's a bunch of them now.
First ones to do it, so I've always been, had a lot of respect and very appreciative for the role that you guys brought. And then Roger, obviously I've known you for a long time, and great to see you partner up with Andrew. And always glad to be on, guys.
All right. Thank you very much, man.
Pleasure's
Take it
always
easy. We will see you later.
All right, guys. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Knightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Knightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this.
We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys?
My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong. Spoiler alert! Until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Knightline Sports Network.
All right. Always good to have Brandon on. Thank you for listening to all that. And we'll have him on again, obviously, before the season and hopefully during the season and all that other stuff. He's probably the person that's been on the show the most. So, and there's a good reason for that. So always love to have him on. You know, one of the cool things that is coming up, and it's as we're recording this on Sunday night, it's coming up very shortly here. And I guess we'll just kind of do this live while they're doing it. But Renaya, what is her? I always forget her last name. Jones? Is it Jones? Is running in the heat in the Olympic trials in the 100 hurdles. I think maybe the swimming may be going a little bit long here, but it'll be the first thing on tonight on NBC at 9 p.m. It is 9 p.m. right now. It's supposed to be on at 9:03, so we shall see. But she's a freshman, All-American, got second in the NCAA championships, which was a huge deal. And then in her first heat, she actually got second as well in the Olympic trials on, what was it, yesterday. So, and the only other person to beat her was the person that won the NCAA championship the other day. So, she is
and this
doing
all from a freshman.
an incredible job. She is super fast. The way that she runs the hurdles. And if you look at her, if you've seen any of the footage or you've watched it yourself, you'll see that she is incredible in the way that she jumps over those hurdles. The top part of her body does not even freaking move, which if you watch the other people that are successful in this, it's just a smooth transition, extremely smooth. I think she's even smoother than the person that won. I think that the other person may be faster, but I think Renaya is smoother going over the hurdles, if that makes sense.
Well, she had a great jump on her semifinal race because she was out of the gate and just stayed strong the entire time. So, the one person that was with her beat her by a hair. I mean, literally a hair. She leaned a little forward, a little faster than what she did. And that was the difference. It was 1/10 of a second.
Right.
So
it was actually 100th, wasn't it?
Or 100th of a second.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm used to quarter mile times and car racing. Sorry, guys. But
those happen in hundredths of a second as well. But anyway.
Tenths and hundredths of a second. Usually you're talking about tenths of a second in car racing. But that being said, unless you're bracket racing,
yes,
which I don't bracket race, I heads up race. But that being said, extremely close. She got out of the chocks really, really, really fast and had a great jump on everybody. So I'm hoping she gets that kind of start on this race as well, because she has to be nervous. I mean, she's 18 years old and
I don't
racing
think
for
she
the
is
Olympics.
nervous. I think that's what's great about her is that I don't think it matters to her. In fact, it's coming up right here. This is it. It's on NBC right now. I don't want to, just sit here and watch it. But she is in, let's see, what lane is she in? I don't see her at the moment. She's usually on one of the inside lanes. I think that she likes that the best. Or that's just where she gets. She's been in lane 2 for like the last few races that she's been in. So I don't know if they get to pick or how that works. Haven't seen her yet. Hopefully she's in this first heat. Maybe in the second one or something, but let's see. They're showing one person, which McNeil is her name. That's all they're showing on TV. They're focused on her and probably talking about her. This is the other thing. They haven't talked about her nearly as much as they should, but she's almost on the Olympic team and came in second in the NCAA for this year. So,
well, she kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, this is the other people. I think the other person that won the NCAAs was a senior. So this person had, track presence for 3 to 4 years.
But in her heats, she did really well. Let's see, where is she? I don't see her in this heat. She's not in the first heat, so nope. That's why I didn't see her.
Yeah, it says she's in the second heat of the 100-meter hurdles.
Anyway, she's done incredibly well. And to come from UCF track, which really is not known in the world of track as a track school, I think that's going to change, though, especially with this girl. And that will be really good for recruiting because, yes, track does recruit. Track has scholarships, everything else. Even though we don't talk about it very often, it does. And it's one of the sports that I think, especially when we have athletes like this, we had 2 people in the NCAA championships, and it's going to be a little while longer because their heat just misstarted or whatever you say. So, all right.
Well, I mean, Dana Boone came in. I think she's been here. I think this may be her second year. She's done a really, really good job of attracting good talent. She's got a great name in the sport. So this is another one of those Katie or Coach Abe hires that you've been hearing about, with someone in the sport. Huh?
A Danny White hire.
Yeah, but I mean, in the same vein.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, where you're bringing in someone who's been really successful in other places and now is turning the sport on end. Now, we did have several folks in several years. We actually won the American Championship, I think, twice since 2016 and raced in the NCAAs. But, she's off to a fast start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember anybody getting second for a national championship in the last few years, since I've been paying attention to it anyway.
No, we've usually placed fourth or fifth in different events in the NCAAs when we have gone.
Yeah. So Renaya Jones is a freshman. I'm trying to find her. Let's see, from Miami.
Freshman All-American as well.
Well, and now a first team All-American when you finish second in the. All right. So the first race is happening here, which is good. We get to the second one here, and it's a pretty tight race between the first two people there too. It looks like a girl is wearing a LSU uniform, and I'm not sure if she won or the McNeil girl won. I think maybe the LSU girl won this one. So Renaya Jones is from Southridge High School in Miami, and she technically, she's a redshirt freshman because she redshirted last year. And this is why we did not hear about her, and she is still a freshman. Last year, 2020, was her first year, and 2021 was technically her redshirt freshman year. So she's been around a little bit. I knew that she had been around longer than to be an actual freshman, so... Yeah, well, I wish this, why can't they realize that we're trying to do Knightline here and make this
they should be on our timeline. What are you talking about?
Make this a little quicker. I mean, we're trying to kind of do this live, and we're not doing very well because they're taking
Well, we're
forever.
doing well. They're not holding up their end of the bottom. They're 4 minutes late already.
They need to hurry. Because, I mean, they're holding us up. People have probably already turned this off because they already know what happened. They're lining up. Oh, well, that's a commercial. Okay, well, all right. Well, we tried to do that. We really wanted to have
Well, listen,
that. We'll talk about
here's-
some other stuff, and then when they come up, we'll let you know what we saw. Because you'll be
here's the
hearing this
thing,
the
right?
next
People
day
are
anyway.
people are probably listening to this while they're running or doing some form of other exercise. So, they're already in the mood to hear about how someone else is doing as far as running is concerned.
All right, let's finish up the recruiting for football thing, because I know you had a couple things that you wanted to talk about on that, and then we'll come back to this.
Okay. So on recruiting front, we definitely have confirmation now that old Gus is using the playoff conversation with recruits. It's been mentioned by a couple of recruits on their interviews or in social media where he's been talking about playoff expansion and how he's playing that and parlaying that into the future at UCF and how they can be part of it. As Brandon mentioned, Thomas Castellanos, the QB from Waycross, Georgia, has been extremely vocal in trying to pull people in. Jamal Johnson, we talked about him and referenced him in that interview as well. He's a 2022 defensive end from Miramar, Florida. He's 6'1", 255 pounds, 3-star. He has offers from BC, Georgia Tech, Iowa State, Kentucky, Miami, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, the Cows, Syracuse, and several others. He has over 15, but those were the major names. I watched a little bit of his film. He's it's not very often you see a defensive end that has patience, but he has a patience like a middle linebacker. He actually reads what the offense is doing pretty well, sits on plays when he needs to. He's got really, really good situational awareness. If someone gets past him, he does a good job of pivoting and swiveling and grabbing that person and tackling them, even if they get slightly a step past him. He's got really good closing speed. He was used a lot. He was stacked close in on the line on the ends. A lot of times you'll see ends stacked a little wider so that they can get a little bit better rushing lane on the quarterback, but he didn't really need that. So he was doing really, really good job of sealing the ends. He's physical when he hits people, brings them down. He's slamming them down. So he's a bigger guy for college or for high school. The one big thing, the only thing I really saw in his game that I'd like to see him improve on is he just needs to do a better job of keeping guys in front of him. I've seen one too many times where he allowed someone to step in front of him. He always caught them, but whenever you're a defensive end, you want to be pushing someone into the defense, or you want to be able to adjust your line to make sure that you're getting and able to tackle whoever you're up against. So that was my breakdown on Jamal. Go ahead.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were breaking in.
Nope.
But that was my breakdown on Jamal. He recently committed this week after the Bounce House weekend, so excited to have him on board. The second commitment was Tyler Griffin. He's a 2022 wide receiver from Brooklet, Georgia. He was 6'4", 200 pounds. He boasts 19 offers, including Cincy, Colorado, ECU, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Nebraska, Tennessee, Tulane, Utah, Virginia Tech, and he's got interest from Georgia. There may be an offer coming from them. Watching his tape, he's got pretty good speed once he gets up to speed. His burst, with him being so lanky, he's a little bit different. He's very physical. Even when he was draped by defensive backs and well covered, he was able to come up with the ball. He can high point pretty well, which for tall guys, that's not necessarily something that they are as good at. His hands are really, really good in traffic. And interestingly enough, he played both sides of the ball. So he also played defensive back. He had a couple interceptions on his tape, and he anticipated the routes really well on that. He can use his body really, really well to block defenders in the catch. So he's aware enough where he can turn around and use his body to block a defender from making a play on the ball. And he actually was used in running plays quite a bit. So he was used in reverses. Even one play that I saw was a single back formation where he was just running the ball. So they used him all over the place. And really excited about him because he gives us that height that we've been looking for. We had Creedle that had come in, Stretch Creedle, that we were expecting to help us with that, but he transferred out. So now we've got some height to help us on the outside of the ball.
Alrighty.
We're going to push through July to get as many people on campus as possible. That's what Brandon was saying, because really a lot of decisions are going to be made. As he said, there are several other silent commits, with one I've heard that's waiting for his birthday next month to announce. So I don't know how many I know there was a lot of energy around the lack of booms after the Bounce House weekend, but hold on to your hats, because I really feel like there's a lot of guys out there that want to take their visits because they have a compressed time to do it. And then lastly, UCF men's hoops welcomed Ethan Wisden, a 7-foot, 215-pound hoops commitment out of Big Time Sports Prep in Rockwall, Texas. Now with him, there wasn't really that much to find out there, but he's a big body. Doesn't have a lot of tape, really low social media presence, so this was kind of a shock. But he is a full scholarship player and someone who's expected to plug up the lane.
All right, well, now they're finally talking about Renaya Jones. They have her on the screen as we speak. She is in lane 6, racing, and she's got her UCF track uniform on, and she's got one of those arm sock things that says Knights on it as well. I was wrong. The person I said the person that beat her was the person that won the NCAA championship in her last heat. That's not true, because she is in this one right now. She's in lane 4, actually. So this will be kind of a rematch of the NCAA championships. They've started. And Renaya looks at this point to be not doing horribly well. She may come on here at the end, though. Nope, she did not. Let's see where she finishes. I don't think she's in there, to be honest with you. I think that may be it for her. Anyway, if that is it for her, she did an incredible job. I do not think that she made it into the finals on this one. I think she finished 4th or even 5th. Not sure where she stumbled, but so the girl that won the NCAA championship won this race, I believe. Trying to watch it again. She got a good start, Renaya did, but then just fell back. Wow, it's hard to tell that she was a ways back there. That's a bummer. Oh well.
Did they list her time?
They haven't listed times yet. They're just showing replays, and these races only take, like 11 seconds. So, she stumbled on the last hurdle. She hit her foot on it as she came across. I think Kenny Harrison won. Renaya came in 5th, 12.68. So,
yeah, that's well slower than her normal time. So she's usually a 12.35 range.
She's been through a lot this week, though. So let me see, though. Did she? No, she did not make it into the final. What a bummer. Oh, well. She did a great job. Not this year. She's still a freshman. She's still extremely young. So, there's a lot of chances later on in life to do this. This is not the last Olympics, and she gave it her all for a freshman, for sure. So, what a bummer. But, oh well. Alrighty. Well, definitely everybody give her a good job on Twitter, though, because she's on there, and, she'll want to see that her knights were watching and all that stuff. So, what a bummer. Okay. Well, was that it for the recruiting stuff that you had to talk about?
Yeah, that's it for recruiting thus far. Happy to have those two guys on. I expect more coming and to come, and excited for what the final haul is going to be after the bounce house weekend and the subsequent recruiting weekends.
Yeah. Plus, there's a little bit more time. I mean, this isn't going to happen until really, National Signing Day now is in December, so that's when we'll really find out. But I think that we'll grab a couple of those higher guys than you would ever think that we would get. I have a feeling that we're going to have some surprises that we took away from maybe some of those Power 5 schools or whatever that are so much better than we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say that as sarcastically
tongue
as
in cheek. I know. I got it.
All right, time for the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week. Welcome to the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week. Visit TijuanaFlats.com for takeout or delivery, or visit your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. All right, Roger, I'm going to let you go first.
All right, folks, he's going to want to rip me apart for my hot take, so I'm just going to go ahead and go first. The Tijuana Flats hot take of the week this week is UCF football will make the playoffs within 3 seasons from today. That gives us some time to build our roster, implement the new system, and the new playoff system starts in 2023. So I'm going to say by the 2024 season, we're in.
And I'm going to say, I think on the radio show we had, which y'all didn't get to hear, unfortunately, because they didn't record it. They're having some issues, and I should have recorded it. I didn't record it. It was my fault plus their fault for not telling me until after the show ended that they didn't record it. Anyway, from now on, I'm going to record it. So you will definitely hear the radio show from now on our podcast feed. Oh boy. Well, I'm going with that we're going to make it the first year that the playoff expands to 12, which will be 2023. We're not going to wait for 3 years. We're going to be the American champions, and we're going to be in it. I think we're going to be the American champions this year as well. Anyway, so I'm not going to rip you apart, but I'm going to say that the very first year that it moves to 12, we will be the team from the G5, or from at least the American. There may be a couple other G5 teams, you never know. But we will be the team from the American the first year that we're able to get into that playoff. And we'll take it from there. All right, good. Sounds good.
Either way, we're going to the playoffs, people.
Yeah, we're going to get in it.
Be excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be great. Those first games are going to be played at, stadiums, at your home stadium or whoever is higher ranked, I guess. They won't be played as far as bowl games. The second ones will be played as bowl games, but the first ones will be an on-campus or in-stadium kind of thing. So if we were higher ranked than our opponent, which probably won't happen the first year if we're 12, if we just get in by the skin of our teeth or something, but there is a possibility that for those playoff games, it could be another home game. One of those playoff games could happen at our own stadium, which would be absolutely awesome. I am stumbling over words tonight like you would not believe. I'm a little rusty, I guess.
I should have given you some tough names tonight for news and notes. That would have been fun.
Well, I'm glad you didn't. And speaking of, here is news and notes. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
Thank you to UCF's own Latavius Murray and Blake Bortles for donating a combined $500,000 toward the renovation of UCF's Sports Medicine Center.
That was a big deal. Wyatt Miller has signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. My Kansas City Chiefs, congratulations and welcome to Red and Gold Nation, Wyatt. That makes 2 with Mike Hughes signing just a little while ago.
UCF welcomes Auburn's Mamadou Nadai to the men's basketball coaching family. He will be an assistant coach and specializes in working with bigs. He's also from Senegal, just like our very own Taco Fall was, and stands 7'5", so just on the cusp of being as tall as Taco.
Wow, he's a big dude. I was wondering, I think we were on the radio show, we were trying to figure that out, and I don't know if we did. Congrats to hometown Alec Hollier for earning a scholarship. His family were longtime UCF Knight fans, and he grew up part of Knightnation. Congratulations, Alec.
Women's Hoops has accepted an invitation to play in the 2021 Cancun Challenge. Other notable participants include Baylor, Houston, Furman, and I don't know if they're notable, Arizona State, Iowa, and USC.
All right, congratulations to Yannick Ote for earning the Dr. C. Hitt Scholar Athlete of the Year award.
John C. Hitt?
Whatever.
Sorry.
What'd I say?
C. Hitt Scholar. Sorry, I'm having a rough time.
I didn't say John?
You didn't. You just completely skipped that.
Whatever.
We all know who it is. The Athletic recently voted
I'm having a
Dylan
bad day.
Yeah, it happens.
Whatever.
The Athletic recently voted Dylan Gabriel as the 3rd best QB in the nation and included him in the top tier of QBs in the country.
Should have just said Dr. Hitt Scholar Athlete Year of the Award.
You could have.
See, I'm even saying stuff backwards. Whatever. I have not been drinking, by the way. That's probably the problem. I spent this entire weekend and I didn't have 1 drop of alcohol. That is probably the issue.
That is 100% the issue.
All right, so you did the one about Dylan Gabriel?
Yep.
All right, the largest gift in UCF school history was made by Mackenzie Scott and Dan Jewett, and it was unrestricted. They donated $40 million, which is quite a lot because UCF's current endowment is only $162 million. So when they add $40 million to that, when it's only $162 million, that's kind of a lot. So
I think it's like 27% of the endowment we just added.
Yeah, and not all of it's going to go into the endowment, but some of it definitely will. I read an article the other day about it, and somebody had that information. So, all right, that's going to do it for Knightline 257. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, UCF. shield. With our spirits we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry, B-S-E-T-O-R-Y, tonight.